the first step is decoupling being a good person from making a mistake. I see
Mm.
so many people that commit micro or macro aggressive behavior and deny it because I'm a good person, and being so tied up in like, no, like I'm not a racist. Like I couldn't have done this thing that
Yeah.
I'm being accused of. And I often talk about we need to divorce those two things, you being a good person and you also being able to cause hurt and harm to somebody. Those two things can exist in the same space, and one does not discount the other.
Today's conversation is about what it really means to build equity in systems that weren't designed with everyone in mind. I'm joined by Dr. Byron Anthony Green-Calisch, a leader, strategist, and educator whose work sits at the intersection of adult education, diversity, equity, and systematic change. From leading inclusion strategy at PRX to founding Green Phoenix Solutions and co-creating Justice Over Everything, Byron brings both organizational insight and community-centered practice to this work. So today we're going to jump into an exploration of restorative justice, accountability, and what it means to move from defensiveness to courage in workplaces and beyond. So, Dr. Byron, I am so glad that you are here today. Before we jump in too far, can you just share a little bit more about you and your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. Byron works just fine, or Dr. BGC, if you find me on the social media streets. I am so excited to be here and to share space with you. A little bit about me. As you mentioned, right now I do serve as Executive Vice President for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility at PRX. I also, before I was there, I started a consulting firm, Green Phoenix Solutions, and I have moved my passions into a nonprofit now called Justice Over Everything, where I got to hang out with my best friend and really create a social justice center. So we focus on both providing leadership, education, and resources for community members and civic engagement, understanding that we cannot address the system solely and we cannot only prepare community leaders, we have to do both of those simultaneously. So providing executive coaching, providing leadership engagement, providing resources to really fortify and create durable leaders, while also diving deeply into how do we recreate a system that is designed for everybody, knowing that the system that we are currently engaged in was not built for everybody. And it is, in fact, behaving exactly how it was meant to behave. So
Yeah.
people are like, this is not America. And I'm like, but yes, baby, it is America. It is doing exactly what America does.
Yeah,
So that
I
is a little bit
appreciate.
of me. Um, I was a researcher in academia, and I worked in student affairs for about 14 years before I transitioned out. So I center the work that I do on research-informed practices and behaviors, but my research is very much centered, again, in decolonized methodology, because I recognize that research methodology was also built by white folks and not built for the people. So it is not meant to be extractive. It is meant to be collaborative and co-created. So that's my elevator speech about me.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I appreciate that you started off right away with saying the system is working exactly as it was designed to work, because I think that is a truth we don't want to wrestle with. So we're just gonna leave that on the table and let people sit with that for a second.
Yeah.
But to the point that you were making, sort of as you were talking about sort of this research experience that you've had. You've spent a lot of time thinking about like what it means to bring multicultural strategies into workplaces. And
Yeah.
I'm really wondering like what that looks like for you in practice.
My dissertation research was looking at racialized spaces and multicultural strategies across those. So what does it look like to engage multicultural strategies in predominantly white spaces and historically Black spaces? And how do they change across difference? And in my research, I understood that that looks different in both spaces, that there are some identities that are inherent to white spaces and there are some identities that are inherent to Black spaces. In Black spaces, there's a history of engaging in strategies that look like social movement. So a history of civil justice and like the Martin Luther Kings and the Malcolm X's, the Bayard Rustins, the James Baldwins, the Audre Lordes, that those folk really shape how historically Black spaces adopt multicultural strategies. So, how do we talk about these things? It's easy to start the conversation with race and engage in things that pervade out from race. It is a little bit more difficult to talk around what does it look like to explore sexuality, and that sexuality seems to get a little disconnected from Black spaces, mostly because of the Black space's connection to the Black church and what we are
Mm.
comfortable with at the center of the Black church as it relates to sexuality is a bit more conservative, but outside socially, really aggressively liberal outside of that sexuality piece. In white spaces, it's almost the exact opposite. More difficult conversations about race, but sexuality is a little bit more comfortable to talk about in those spaces. And nationality also looks different. How do we engage with immigrants, and how do we engage with people that are not ethnocentric or United States centric in white spaces? Easily a little bit easier to do in Black spaces, a little bit more nuanced in white spaces. As we look at the workplace, we have to understand that most of our workplaces in today's culture have been built as white spaces. So looking at how do we extrapolate from my research to what we're doing today, knowing there is some hesitancy to talk about race as a construct, as a singular construct. How do we bring more diversity into the space and more acknowledgement of identities as a whole? So sometimes people are like, wow, I thought we were only going to talk about race and sex. And I am talking about class. I am also talking about socioeconomic status. I'm also talking about your language. I'm all talking about your body size. I'm talking about your ability to learn, any learning disabilities that may be involved. What does that look like to bring all of it into the space and interrogate it simultaneously? We also know that people are more likely to engage in strategies that are attached to people that they know. So, for instance, if I know a trans person, I am more likely to engage in advocacy for the trans population. So, I have a gender diverse kid, and my experiences raising a gender diverse child opened my eyes to parenting a gender diverse child and what strategies do I pull in from that. But that required me to invest even deeper into trans spaces, and how do I show up humbly to learn in those trans spaces because of my connection to my child. And luckily I was already in some of those spaces before our child came along, but that really drove me deeper into that space. And that's what it looks like in white spaces across the board. So that's a little
Yeah.
bit around how we're tackling it, making it personal.
I'm appreciating that, and I'm hearing a couple of threads that are running through what you just talked
Yeah.
about. So first and foremost, right, there's this idea of intersectionality that even if we belong to one group, we still have all these other ways that we're going to intersect with different identities that we may have, and all of us. I think this is the other really big thing to understand. All of us have multiple identities in that way.
Yeah.
The other thing that I heard you say loud and clear is, like, we have to be committed to and responsible for our own learning, whatever that happens to be. You
Whew.
mentioned, gender diverse, so that might be a particular pathway. For the next person, it's gonna look completely different, but the thing is we're committing to learning.
Mhm.
Um, and the third thing that I heard you say was it was about humility, right? Like,
Yes.
I'm showing up and understanding, I don't know this world, I don't know this topic just yet, but I'm willing to sit with it. And so I kinda wanna take that and just maybe have you talk a little bit more about, in particular, if you think about the majority of us, we are working in spaces that are not necessarily designed for everyone.
Whew.
And so I know, right? A simple statement, but not so simple, right? So
Right.
as we're preparing ourselves to go into these spaces with these multiple identities, what does it mean to actually be prepared for ourselves? Or if maybe you're a white identifying person and you are dominant culture, you want to prepare the space for other people. Like, how do we show up with grace and curiosity in these environments?
I I think the first step is decoupling being a good person from making a mistake. That I see
Mm,
so many people that commit micro or macro aggressive behavior and deny it because I'm a good person, and being so tied up in like, no, no, like, I'm not a racist. Like, I couldn't have done this thing that
yeah.
I'm being accused of. And I often talk about we need to divorce those two things, you being a good person and you also being able to cause hurt and harm to somebody. Those two things can exist in the same space. And one does not discount the other. So I start there. The other piece is recognizing that we don't know everything, which is hard. And as I coach leaders, I see that more often the higher we go up because society has told leaders that you must know everything. That
Yeah.
leaders exist in spaces where certainty is valued. So being certain on everything that you do has become a part of your identity. So when you don't know a thing, you often behave as if you do. And now we are treading into uncharted waters where you clearly don't know everything, right? So, what does it look like for us to redefine leadership as a curiosity exercise? That you have the framework, the knowledge, the know how, the previous experience to take someone else's new innovative idea and work it into systems that are already working, or how to pivot them, and not the leader is the smartest person in the room or the leader is the person that knows the most.
Yeah, that one is hitting home for me in so many ways right now. I just am fresh off a talk that I did for a CEO group where I talked about the fact that I don't view many of the people I work with as having a leadership problem. I see it more as a capacity problem they have, but it sort of ties into some of what you just said because we are asked in these moments to be more decisive, more certain, assume more
Yes.
risk, do all of these things faster, 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 that we're
Mhm.
not actually slowing down to think about like, are we solving for the right issues in this moment? And even getting back to this idea of like, do I have to be the smartest person in the room as the leader? I actually would argue you shouldn't be, right? I
No,
want to spend less time focusing on building strong voices and spend more time on building strong rooms because now I have 20 to 50 people who can respond versus my one idea. And so I just love sort of the direction that you're taking this in, and really thinking about like what that means to internalize for folks who are trying in this moment to move the needle forward in their own organizations.
yes, and it's hard. Like, I'll be the first person to say I think I just engaged with, a LinkedIn article, and I read the comments. That was mistake number 1. But the conversation was about what does it look like to do equity work inside of an organization, and so
Mm.
much of the work is not around frameworks that work, but around understanding politics and humans, and how do we navigate humans. The society that we are currently in, to your point, has made us go faster, 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 productivity, 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 and has thrown a wrench in the let me slow down and learn who you are.
Ooh, yes, yes. And you
Right.
know, and that's the interesting part because that's where I get the pushback most, right? Is when I
Mhm.
ask people to pause, to slow the pace. They're like, "No, there's accountability. We have metrics. We have to hit these outputs." And I'm like, you yes, I get those things. And I'm not
Mhm.
necessarily saying we're going to trade one in for the other because I don't see this as an either or type of situation. But
Not
all
at
I
all.
know is whether we're at work or in our personal lives, the faster we move, the more we're going to get wrong.
My God, every organization that I have worked inside of or consulted for, the first thing I tell folks is that we ain't going fast. Like, I need
Yeah.
you to know that up front, that anything that you are doing fast is not going to be sustainable. That you look at elite level runners, sprinters are not long distance runners,
Yes.
and long distance runners are not sprinters. If you want to go far, you need to pace yourself. And we know that because the body is not built to do that. Why would your brain be able to do that? You are working quickly, fast. Yeah, you're going to bump into things. Yes, you're going to make mistakes. And if you don't have that relationship with another human to extend that grace
Mhm,
when you make a
mhm.
mistake, it's going to be bigger. So you can invest the time now or you can invest the time later.
Yeah,
And from a
absolutely.
culture perspective, it is going to do you a world of good to invest the time on the front end and not make the mistakes on the back end or have grace for when you do make
Mhm.
mistakes on the back end.
Yeah. I think that comment is really resonating with me deeply because I think about the number of organizations that I've gotten called into after, right?
Mhm.
After something has erupted. There's no longer trust here. We're fighting with
Uh-huh.
each other. No one's listening. It's a blame culture. You name it. Like there's a whole lot of stuff that's going on. And yet, the very thing that built trust, right? Slowing down, having those good conversations up front was missing.
Mhm.
Right, and I'm like, "Well, of course we're here now, but you're tasked with trying to figure this out, and you're paying me a good sizable check to figure out the things that we could have addressed before you needed to call me."
This starts before your first person walks in the door. I talk a lot about um, preparation when I give talks or when I'm coaching leaders that taking myself, for example, I'm allergic to white potatoes. It's a thing. I
Okay.
feel horribly about it. Yes, that means I can't have French fries or potato chips, and it's my lot in life. But I tell people as socially, like, hey, before I come to your house, I just need you to know I'm allergic to white potatoes, so that you don't prepare a meal that is centered around potatoes, so that I can eat.
Mhm.
Right, but that requires you to do work before I arrive to your space, right? That requires you to think about what does Byron need when he comes into my house? I can't have vodka, potato-based vodkas. Okay, so maybe we need to switch to a rum. I wanna make sure that he can have the side dish, so I'm not gonna make white potatoes, I might need to make sweet potatoes or beets or rutabagas, or, like, how do
Right.
I change because I want him to feel welcome in my space. It's the same thing for the organizations that we work in. How much work are we doing before we called for a diverse work staff?
Ooh, Byron. There's so much there. I first off, I love that example because I have never heard of anyone with an allergy to a white potato. I am so sorry.
It's horrible.
And I will make sure we have the right refreshments for you should we ever get together in that way.
What?
But what I'm thinking about as you talk about like the house that we're building literally. I
Mhm,
fundamentally believe we want diversity in spaces, right? I welcome you because you have this particular identity, you have this lived experience. There's something different about you. And
mm.
yet, I do not think we do any work whatsoever to prepare the table for our guest because it's more like we welcome your diversity in, but now that you're here, please sit down and be more like the
And
rest
be
of
like
us.
everybody else? Yep.
Right. And so I feel like that is such a misstep because I don't even care. Like, I know DEI, quote unquote, has a bad name right now, but even the diversity in terms of what people do for a living, how they process information in your company, any kind of diversity, how neurodivergent versus a typical, thinking and speaking person, we still need to prepare for our guests, for our workers, our community.
I use a
What does
lot
that look
of
like?
I use a lot of, leadership diagnostics in my coaching
Hmm.
practice and in the work that I do in equity work because it also helps people understand diversity and what that looks like across your scores. And one of the ones that I use is the conflict dynamics profile. And the conflict dynamics profile talks about how do you engage in conflict? There are constructive behaviors and there are deconstructive behaviors. So things
Mm,
that add to a relationship and things that take away from a relationship. Those behaviors also look different from different cultures. So, what does it look like for me to yell as a black man versus what might it look like for a white woman to yell? Or what might it look like for a East Asian person to yell? Or taking a break. What might that look like for you
yeah.
and your identities compared to your daughter or
Yeah.
your
Can I
kid?
ask a clarifying question? Because I want to make sure listeners really walk away with the intent of what you're saying here. When you say, "What does it look like?" Are we talking about, and this might be a both and, how it looks to the outside observer of, me showing up whatever way I show up, or because I could see this being powerful too, how we personally internalize it from our own vantage point?
Both. um, so because I coach with this, I coach alongside of this piece. I often engage with people that are exhibiting the behavior. So people that are engaging in conflict, that are thinking about, I'm a very passionate person. And sometimes that passion in conflict comes out as volume, but I'm
Mm,
focused so much on not being loud because I don't want people to think I'm the angry black woman or the loud black girl. So I spend time thinking, making myself smaller, and I am unable to effectively get my point across because I am shrinking myself in the
yep,
process of trying to articulate simultaneously. But also, what does it look like when people experience us? That also looks different because what grace do you give when you don't have context of the person? So if I know a person and I know that they are getting animated, I can give grace because I know I have seen them get animated in positive situations or in negative situations, which goes back to that relationship with the
mm,
identity and what grace are you given to that identity. That if I know black women and I know black women can get animated or get loud in every situation, so that is not tied to anger. Am I more inquisitive? Am I more curious about what's about to come next? Because I have
yeah,
experience that I don't need to have my guard up because this could be anything. You could be excited, you could be mad. What am I about to get? And I think that is where the diversity in the conflict comes in. And people say like, oh, I'm so conflict averse because I don't want to ruin the relationship. And I offer that conflict can actually build your relationships because it unearths values. And there are not a lot of spaces where, as adults in workplaces, we are able to clearly articulate our values in anything. That we
mm,
spend a lot of time talking about the organizational values, not a ton about what are the things that are super close to us. What
yep,
are the things that make us us, and how did we get here? How do we express that outwardly?
yeah, and how do we interpret that particular value? We don't all see the world the same way. We might use the same word, but it doesn't mean the same thing
Mm,
definitionally.
that part.
Um, yeah, there's so much there. So I wanted to kind of just ask this other question. And this was more so because we had spoken briefly about restorative justice before. And
Mhm.
so this is a tool that's often seen as operating in support of healing divisions, so forth. How have you seen it to maybe be utilized in instances where there is polarization or there's a breakdown in trust? How do we use this tool?
One, I'm gonna give my context from a few different spaces. One, as a equity leader at an organization that oversees HR. So that's different than most organizations. Most organizations, the DEI person reports to HR. For us, HR reports to me. Um, and I live in that space. Also, being a consultant for years and working in spaces and also working with students in the restorative
Mm,
justice space. So that is the context in which I start this conversation. One, I think it absolutely requires that two people are willing to do it. And more importantly, the person that has been harmed is willing to engage in a world where things might be better. So I don't ever allow restorative justice to be on the table until the person that was harmed is open to a conversation about the future relationship between themselves and the person that caused the harm. That is important to start off with because I don't want two people walking in and thinking like on different pages and now we're about to battle.
yeah.
So I actually end up coaching both of them simultaneous and separate from each other in coaching spaces to get ready for that conversation.
Hmm.
One, the person that has been harmed, exploring like, what does it look like for this conversation to go well? What does it look like for this conversation to not go well? How do we prepare ourselves for any and all things? And how do we want to articulate what you need? to build a better future together with this person. And on the other side, the person that has harmed, um, where are you at in this art? Are you ready to apologize for the harm that you have caused, even if you may not have understood wholly how you caused the harm to begin with? And this conversation might illuminate that for you.
Mm,
What barriers might you see going into this that we might be able to deal with here and not force this person to do labor in this conversation? What labor can we do before we walk into this space? So in that, I think sometimes people jump into restorative justice conversations quickly. And I think that is a disservice to the two people that are engaged in it if they walk into a space and they are not prepared to
yeah.
engage in that space wholly.
So
But
like,
I've seen it work so well when people are prepared for what they're about to get into. And
mm,
I've seen it again because I believe that conflict can build strong relationships, that we can talk about how my values showed up in this conflict. You may not have known this about me, but X. And I responded to your thoughts or your actions because of my experience with Y and Z. And now we're able to get past some of the surface stuff. And I may have this person over here had an experience with X, Y, and Z. And they're like, oh my gosh, I
yeah.
experienced that very differently. And I never wanted somebody to feel those feelings as a result of my work. Now we are starting to see that we can move from the impact to the intent and interrogate that a little bit differently and and build up relationship and develop some of that trust in the vulnerability,
Mm,
but move through it. Does it happen overnight? Does it happen quickly? Absolutely not. But I have seen it do really beautiful things and really strong relationships come out of it.
mhm. So again, like I'm hearing a lot of through lines for some of the earlier things that we talked about today. So it's pausing, it's slowing down, it's
That,
meeting the
yeah.
people where they are, right at
Well,
that level.
like, baby, we can't
Um,
do that fast. What
yeah,
we just talked about, that process, it has to exist in a space where we are willing to slow down, that
yeah.
we
And
value the slowing down.
as a fellow coach here, like I also see daily like the importance of asking powerful questions to people to have them just sit with something.
Mm,
We're not telling people what to believe or we're not leading you, but it is more what are you noticing within
yeah.
yourself?
Danielle,
Uh,
I this is a hill that I will die on. Uh, I believe that culturally informed coaching makes for a better outcome because understanding of the systemic issues or the culture around the person that you are coaching, you are going to ask very different questions than somebody that does not have that same foundational knowledge. You're
mhm.
not going to ask me, what is it like to go to homecoming and get a fish plate? Because you inevitably know what it's like to go to homecoming and get a fish plate. Your HBCU might have been different than the one that I grew up on, but you know the importance of the connection to it or
Yeah,
the family reunion and how
like
the movie Soul Food was a little too real. And we don't talk about that.
I'm just
enough.
laughing because yes to all of that, and the drum line, we're gonna throw that in too. No, I
But
hear you.
understanding all of those things makes you a better coach for people that come from that culture. So I do believe in the power of really in-depth questions to help navigate things. But I know that coaches that know how to ask culturally informed questions change the outcome for their participants.
Yeah. I so love that, and the thing is, I believe well, first off, I'm coming up on that hill with you because I will die on that hill right alongside of you.
Yeah.
I think that the vast amount of coaches, at least that I have experienced, could coach across
Hmm.
social identities
Yeah.
if they are willing to sit with an experience that is not necessarily theirs, hold space for it, and ask those questions that really are going to help everyone begin to, to develop deeper levels of awareness and knowledge.
which requires you to be humble.
Yeah.
Even as a coach, I
Oh,
I
absolutely.
I'm like, "Baby, first off, if you think you about to work with somebody that knows the answer to everything, that's not my job.
Yeah.
Like, that's not who I am. That is not my job. My job is actually not to tell you what to do. My job is to interrogate. My job
Mhm.
is to walk alongside you. My job is to hold and support you and lift you up and also simultaneously hold you accountable in those same spaces." But that coupled with humility and saying, "Hey, I don't know about that. Tell me more about it."
Yeah.
Or I know exactly about that situation and I see how those two things could be similar. What is that? What's bringing that? What's coming up for you?
What you're bringing up right now, I know that we are both coaches. But I think even beyond being a coach, the very questions that you have just posed, I think anyone can ask, right? So if
Yes.
I'm thinking about polarization, I'm thinking about I want to get to know this person who culturally is different from me. Tell me about it, right? Like what's important to you about this in your culture? What do you value? What are your norms, your traditions look like? There are so many ways that we could enter this conversation and just sit with people.
And just say it. We had a really great conversation, insight audience into what Danielle and I talk about Christmas movies and like different cultural Christmas movies. And I really sat with that and I was like, there is a world where people experience different Christmas movies and it did not take away from other Christmas movies. That if somebody came up to me and said, my favorite Christmas movie is White Christmas, that doesn't change the fact that my favorite Christmas movie is This Christmas. Problematic. I fully acknowledge that. It's 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 problematic. Or, you know, there are some others that are also great, but all of these movies exist in the context of themselves.
Yeah.
That if I as a human want to know more about your culture, not as a coach, just as a somebody looking to exist, I can ask that question of, "Tell me about your thing," and it doesn't make my thing any less. It doesn't make my
Yes.
experience any cheaper. It doesn't take away from anything that I have to know that yours existed at the same time that mine existed.
That is so true on so many levels. And I very rarely talk about this on this podcast, but I will say my partner and I come from vastly different worlds, right? And
Yeah.
including down to the musical choices that we have.
Uh-huh.
And it is understood I am not going to concerts with him. He is likely not coming to concerts with me. And that is okay, right? Because at
Completely.
the end of the day, I can ask questions about it. I can, did you have a good time? Who did you catch up with? Like, I wanna know all the things. I legitimately care. I
Mhm.
don't have to partake in everything, but I
No.
value it because I value him. I value other people, right? So that makes it real enough for me want to dive deep into, right? And I would say the same thing is about culture, right? I don't need to belong to your cultural group, your
No.
particular lifestyle, or whatever it is that we're talking about for me to find value in it because I care about your humanity and the other person on the end of this.
Absolutely. My husband is a Kylie Minogue fan, which I had never heard of Kylie Minogue before I met my husband. And I was like, okay, like let's do it. Let me experience
Love it.
it. And he was a Beyonce fan, but not as big as a Kylie fan. And we have gone to Beyonce and Jay-Z concerts and we've gone to Kylie Minogue concerts and both exist in the same space and neither takes away from each other.
Yes.
And if I want to go to, I'm not going to insert rapper's name because everybody disappoints me and I don't want anybody being like, cancel Byron because he listens to X rapper. But my husband's like, if you want to go, please go. I don't need to
Mhm.
go. Or if he wants to go to a Latin music concert because he does love his Latin reggaeton, I'm like, baby, go off. Do I
Yeah.
know the words? Nope. But
Yep.
I was at that Bad Bunny Bowl, just
Sometimes you don't have to understand the language to understand the vibe.
And now we're back to that conversation about the vibe. What are the feelings? Can we
Mhm,
relate to that?
mhm. Are you willing to? That's for me, before I even worry about can you, are you willing to?
Are you willing to? Because we
Right?
can do a whole lot if you want to. And I will
Mm.
tell my clients that people move at the rate of self-interest.
Yes. Yes.
If you are interested in it, you will move.
Mhm.
If other people are interested in it, they will move. As an
Yeah.
adult, we learn when we care. There's a reason that we do this.
A 100%. And to that end, I would also say, like, as a coach, I can't be more committed to your outcomes than you are. But I'm gonna extrapolate that and take that back out into society because if we're talking about bridging across divides, all I hear is people telling other folks what they should be doing, how they should be thinking, how they should be moving in these moments. And I'm like, if they are not committed to these outcomes, you cannot be more committed than they are.
And I will die. Another hill that I will die on is that our system, because we are so prioritized speed, we stop asking people what they need. That
Yeah.
I can't tell you to go do something without asking you, what do you need first?
Mm, yeah.
And I
I
learned that.
I that's coming
No.
up in so many spaces right now.
Yeah. I I I tell people I get the chance to work with elected officials and often around election time, people are like, okay, so how do I attack this? I'm like, you late. The best time to build coalitions is the day after an election to
Yeah.
go out and listen to why people are upset. What are they afraid of? What are they hopeful about? And then continue to engage with them after that.
Yeah.
Now you are spending time in relationship and in community with people so that when you do need to ask them for something, you've already given of your time, of your treasure, of your resources, of your power, your position that they are willing to give back to you.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
that's relationships.
Yeah, we can't draw from an empty well, and I think we're very transactional, and so instead of thinking about, like, how we transform this relationship, this issue, this system that we're dealing with, we're focused on the, "What can you do for me today? What have you done for me lately?"
If you
And
didn't say it, I was going to say it.
yeah, yeah. It's, um it's unfortunate, and I think that if you talk to people on some fundamental level, I haven't met a single person who doesn't recognize this.
Mhm.
Right? And so if we recognize it, what will you do differently tomorrow about it?
Well,
So I know, Byron, we are almost at time. So I want to, I feel like we could probably keep talking. So you may have to come back for a part two. But I
yes,
did want
please.
to ask you what is coming up in your business that you might want to share with people?
Yes, absolutely. So Justice Over Everything is a executive coaching organization that builds durable leaders that are designed to be authentic in any space that they show up in. So I always have the door open. Because we are a nonprofit, we do have a sliding scale. So I don't want anybody not engaging in executive coaching because they feel like finances are prohibitive in this space. We designed this to be equitable and accessible to everybody. So that is
Love
number
it.
one. And there's so many people that could benefit from executive coaching that don't take the opportunity because of stigma or because of fear or finances. And I'm sure you do this as well, but like I want to dispel that rumor because I want us to be better. I want us to show up in ways that are authentic to us. I don't want people shrinking themselves to exist in these
Mm.
spaces. And that is what coaches like us really get joy from. So please check us out, justiceovereverything.com. Find me on socials, Dr. BGC, on Instagram, on all the other places.
We'll get it all in the show notes for folks. Byron, thank you so much for coming on and just chatting. I know I so much like enjoy the conversations we have just in general, but I really
Yeah,
wanted to give people a peek behind the curtains, if you
I was
will.
about to say
So
now it's memorialized. So they know.
well, you have a wonderful rest of your week. I
Thank you.
thank you so much for just coming and sitting down with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. It makes a big difference in helping us grow this community. And if you're looking for coaching or resources to take your cultural awareness to the next level, visit us at culture-principles.com/coaching. And remember, where curiosity leads, connection follows. Be well.